The small town of Crestwood Hills was a postcard of suburban perfection, manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, and a homeowners association that ruled with an iron fist. Nestled in the heart of this community was a sprawling property owned by Marcus Reed, a quiet entrepreneur who ran a small landscaping business from his land. His property wasn't just a home, it was his livelihood. With a warehouse for equipment and a driveway wide enough for his work trucks, Marcus had lived there for a decade, keeping to himself, paying his dues, and avoiding the HOA's relentless scrutiny. But the HOA, led by the indomitable Pamela Worthington, had other plans for him. Pamela, a woman whose smile was as sharp as her clipboard, had been the HOA president for years, her reign marked by petty fines, endless meetings, and an obsession with control. She was the kind of person who measured grass blades with a ruler and sent violation notices for slightly faded porch paint. To her, Marcus's property, with its functional but unpolished warehouse, was an eyesore in her vision of suburban utopia. The trouble began on a crisp autumn morning when Marcus woke to an unusual rumble. Stepping outside, he froze. A massive freight train, its rusted cars stretching like a steel wall, sat motionless across the back of his property. It blocked his driveway entirely, trapping his work trucks and cutting off access to the warehouse. The train wasn't on his land, technically. It sat on a narrow strip of adjacent property owned by the HOA, a forgotten parcel they'd acquired years ago for community projects. Marcus stared, dumbfounded, as the train's shadow loomed over his livelihood. He'd never seen it move in all his years in Crestwood Hills. The tracks were relics, used sparingly by a regional freight company, yet here it was, deliberately parked to choke his access. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. HOA meeting tonight. Attendance mandatory. Discuss property compliance. The message was unsigned, but Marcus knew Pamela's tone. He spent the day assessing the damage. His trucks couldn't move, meaning his crew couldn't reach their landscaping jobs. Clients were already calling, frustrated by missed appointments. Marcus's business, built on reliability, was hemorrhaging money by the hour. He drove to the train's edge, searching for answers, and found a small sign bolted to one of the cars. Property of Crestwood Hills HOA, authorized parking. His blood boiled. This wasn't an accident. Pamela had orchestrated this, leveraging the HOA's control over the adjacent land to flex her authority. Marcus had heard whispers of her vendettas, neighbors fined into submission, mailboxes repainted on her whim. But this was a new low. He spent the afternoon calling the freight company, only to learn they'd been paid by the HOA to park the train for temporary storage. No one would budge without HOA approval. The evening meeting was held in the community center, a sterile room packed with folding chairs and nervous neighbors. Pamela stood at the front, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk. The agenda was vague, but Marcus knew it was about him. The HOA board, a collection of Pamela's loyalists, presented a proposal to beautify the community by restricting commercial activity on residential lots. Marcus's landscaping business, they argued, lowered property values. The train, they claimed, was a temporary measure to encourage compliance while they reviewed his property's zoning. Marcus sat in the back, his fists clenched as neighbors avoided his gaze. Some sympathized, but fear of Pamela's wrath kept them silent. The meeting ended with a vote to extend the train stay indefinitely, passed with a chorus of reluctant eyes. Marcus left, his mind racing. This wasn't just about aesthetics. It was personal. Days turned into weeks and the train remained, a hulking symbol of Pamela's power. Marcus's business bled clients, his savings dwindled, and his frustration grew. He pored over HOA bylaws, searching for a loophole. The documents were a labyrinth of legal jargon, but one clause caught his eye. The HOA's authority over the adjacent land required unanimous owner consent for major decisions, like leasing it for storage. Marcus hadn't signed anything. He dug deeper, contacting a lawyer friend who specialized in property law. The lawyer confirmed the clause was ironclad. If even one homeowner withheld consent, the HOA's action was void. Marcus realized Pamela had overplayed her hand, assuming he'd cave under pressure. He began quietly meeting with neighbors, sharing his findings. Most were hesitant, cowed by years of Pamela's rule, but a few were fed up enough to listen. Marcus's plan took shape slowly. He needed proof that the HOA's use of the land was unauthorized, and he needed allies. He spent evenings knocking on doors, explaining how Pamela's overreach threatened everyone. The train wasn't just his problem. It set a precedent for the HOA to control any property. A few neighbors, tired of fines for minor infractions like unapproved flower beds, began to rally. One, an elderly woman named Clara, revealed she'd never signed the land consent form either, buried in a stack of paperwork years ago. Marcus's hope grew. If he could gather enough dissenters, he could challenge the HOA's authority entirely. But Pamela wasn't idle. She doubled down, sending violation notices for Marcus's non-compliant warehouse and threatening liens. The train stayed put, its presence a daily taunt. By the end of the month, Marcus had a small coalition. Clara, a retired accountant with a knack for paperwork, uncovered more discrepancies in the HOA's records. The adjacent land's title was murky, its acquisition rushed and poorly documented. Marcus's lawyer friend suggested a bold move. If the HOA's formation documents were flawed, a single signature could trigger a dissolution vote. Marcus hesitated. Dissolving the HOA was nuclear. It would strip Pamela's power but could plunge the community into chaos. Yet the train, still blocking his life, left him little choice. He filed a formal objection to the land's use, citing the unanimous consent clause. The HOA board dismissed it, claiming the clause was outdated. Marcus knew then that this was only the beginning. He needed to outmaneuver Pamela, and fast, before his business collapsed entirely. The battle lines were drawn as winter crept into Crestwood Hills. Marcus's objection sparked a flurry of HOA meetings, each more heated than the last. Pamela, sensing resistance, tightened her grip. She organized community beautification events, rallying her loyalists to paint Marcus as a troublemaker. The train became a symbol of her resolve, a steel barricade against dissent. But Marcus wasn't alone anymore. Clara and a handful of neighbors formed a quiet rebellion, digging into the HOA's legal foundations. They discovered a bombshell. The HOA's original charter filed decades ago had a fatal flaw, a missing signature from a founding property owner. If proven, it could invalidate the HOA's existence. Marcus's lawyer drafted a petition to dissolve the HOA, requiring only one original owner's signature to force a vote. Clara, who'd lived in Crestwood Hills since its founding, was that owner. Marcus spent weeks preparing, knowing Pamela would fight dirty. The train still loomed, a daily reminder of his dwindling options. His business was on its last legs, with only a few loyal clients remaining. He poured his energy into rallying support, meeting neighbors in secret to avoid Pamela's spies. The community was split. Some saw Marcus as a hero, others as a threat to their orderly lives. Pamela, meanwhile, escalated her campaign. She hired a lawyer to counter Marcus's petition, claiming the charter's flaw was a clerical error. She sent letters accusing Marcus of undermining property values, turning neighbors against him. The tension was palpable, with every mailbox notice and community meeting fueling the divide. Marcus felt the weight of it all, but Clara's resolve kept him grounded. She'd seen HOAs come and go, and she believed in Marcus's cause. The breakthrough came on a snowy evening, when Clara found the original charter in a dusty box of records. Her signature was indeed missing, a fact the HOA's lawyer couldn't dispute. Marcus's petition gained traction, and the lawyer filed it with the county. The HOA was forced to schedule a dissolution vote, but Pamela wasn't done. She lobbied neighbors, promising lower dues and new amenities if they kept the HOA intact. Marcus countered with the truth. The HOA's overreach, the train's illegality, the years of petty tyranny. The vote loomed, a make-or-break moment for Crestwood Hills. Marcus stood at his window, staring at the train's silhouette against the snow. He'd come too far to back down, but the outcome was uncertain. The community's future and his own hung in the balance, waiting for the vote that would decide everything. If you're hooked on this HOA showdown, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for part 3. You won't believe how this ends.